Evading law enforcement requires extreme planning, strategic moves, and sometimes you even have to kill to save yourself or loved ones, and in chess terms, they call it sacrificing a piece, because that's the name of the game. There are no friends in the street, and sometimes you have to sacrifice to move forward. Kanan was a character who once found out the hard way, because Ghost got rid of Kanan to further his own ambition, which is also a lesson Tasha once taught Tariq, so keep that in mind, because now that Tariq has spent some time in jail, I don't think he's gonna want to go back. His sole purpose is to leave the game and get back to his family, and he's gonna do anything necessary, and in my opinion, even as far as sending down one of the Tejadas if he has to, which again comes down to sacrificing a piece on the chessboard. So this video will be slightly different and something we've never done before. We're gonna dissect the investigation for those involved and those implicated in various crimes, and throughout this video I'm gonna be running through my own thoughts and theories based on the evidence, facts, and findings, because it has been foreshadowed law enforcement will play a crucial role not just in Power Book 2 Ghost, but also Force. So strap yourselves in and stick with the video till the end, because we are going to dissect a whole lot of information in terms of the investigation for Power Book 2 Ghost Season 3. Those involved in the crime world will always meet law enforcement. It's a never-ending cycle, and it is a vicious cycle which ends in death or jail for many. So are any of us surprised that Blanca Rodriguez returned at the end of Season 2? Probably not. Blanca Rodriguez was someone who wanted to nail James St Patrick and Tommy Egan at any cost. She even went as far as to changing Andre Coleman's statement in Power.
If the answer is no, then we're both fucked. Did James St. Patrick tell you that he killed Terry Silva?
No, he didn't tell me he did it. I saw him do it.
This is the kind of agent Tariq, the Tejadas, and Davis McLean will be dealing with in Season 3. Blanca Rodriguez would stop at nothing to put Tariq behind bars, especially after the death of one of her CIs, Dante Spears. Mecca was a character who was introduced to Ghost with two identities. To some, he was Dante Spears. To others, he was Mecca, but he went out as the goat of global snitches. But this is the reason why Blanca Rodriguez is back on the scene. Dante Spears was her CI, and now that he's dead, she's investigating the murder of Mecca. But even though we know who was behind the trigger, she doesn't. So it goes without saying, eyes and ears will be on a lot of key players, but Mecca's death is just scratching the surface. There was Bars, Ramirez, Jabari, Zeke, and Lauren's death, and a whole lot of people implicated. But before we come to the suspects and criminals involved, we need to look at who's involved from the perspective of law enforcement.
You should take the L. Now you go after Tariq again, another loss could derail your career as a prosecutor, isn't that? Just walk away. Just walk away while you still can.
One of the best pieces of advice Cooper Saxe has ever given someone on Power was to tell Jenny Sullivan, take the L, leave the investigation alone while she can, but we all know better. Jenny Sullivan is a character who wants justice, and she fought tooth and nail to try and prosecute Tariq for both Ramirez and Jabari, but to no avail. What complicated things further was the fact Cooper Saxe and Jenny Sullivan were on opposite sides of the law, but also somewhat in a relationship. However, Cooper Saxe was battling with his inner demons throughout Season 2. It didn't sit right with him that he was not only protecting criminals, but also putting them back on the street, and after the death of Lauren, that was the final straw.
I'm doing it for you. And to see that justice is done, but right now, they feel like the same thing to me.
Cooper Saxe has now turned into an inside man for Jenny Sullivan, and he'll be informing on Davis McLean, who's protecting Tariq St Patrick and the Tejadas. So we can make a very good case where it may even be Cooper Saxe's final stand. But what damage will he cause along the way if he were to go out? That's the million-dollar question, and something I will touch on later. There's also a certain character who seems to be on the radar of Jenny Sullivan, but again, we'll come back to that later on. Kevin Whitman is a character who has his suspicions, and you can see why he's a detective. He went to visit Everett, who had already given his statement, but even though at first glance he never got anything new, if we've learned one thing about Kevin Whitman, he has a key eye for detail. Earlier in the season when he went to visit Carrie, he noticed that she moved the couch from where it used to be when they were dating. So as we come back to the scene of Whitman questioning Everett, he noticed some clothes on the floor in Everett's dorm room, and who was the person hiding in the background? Tejada. a character who does spend a hell of a lot of time at Stansfield, so that's something not only Whitman will keep in mind, but something we need to dissect when we look at Drew's role and the dangers of his relationship with Ev. The man who was at the heart of the defense of not just Tariq St Patrick, but also the Tejadas, was Davis McLean. He's also going to be a character who's going to be at the center of attention again in season 3, because not only is Blanca Rodriguez coming, so is Cooper Saxe and Jenny Sullivan, but something we do have to consider when it comes to Davis McLean is his brother Theo Rollins.
I would do anything to get you out.
And I would do anything to keep you out. Do you understand?
In the upcoming season, I fully expect Theo to be released, but the side plot in the investigation board we need to be mindful of is Davis McLean being the man behind the manslaughter. Despite what many think of him, Cooper Saxe is highly intelligent, and he will no doubt connect the dots, and when he does, what do you guys think will happen? Will Theo kill Saxe to save Davis, or will Saxe get a major win by inflicting McLean's first ever defeat? Now, before we move on to the main suspects, I do think it's worth mentioning 2-Bit and Detective Santana, who I've described as wildcards. The reason why they're both wildcards is because I'm not sure they'll feature in season 3, but 2-Bit was the one who actually killed Boz, and he still hasn't come back to collect from Tariq. Detective Santana is also a character who's a regular on another show, but if you're not dead, there's always a possibility you can come back, so there are a few characters we should keep in mind. Naturally, a St. Patrick will always be at the center of attention of any investigation or murder, and Tariq St. Patrick is no different. Trouble follows him wherever he goes, and those close to him either have to disappear or end up dead, just like in the case of Carrie, Jabari, Lauren, or his family, who he's now fighting to get back to. But standing in his way will be Blanca Rodriguez, and it is going to be intriguing to see how Tariq deals with being on Wall Street, his studies, working with the Tejadas, potentially Simon Stern and Rashad Tate, but also Blanca Rodriguez and Cooper Saxe working as an inside man for Jenny Sullivan. But do I expect Tariq to be in an orange jumpsuit 2 seasons running? I don't think so. When you've made a mistake like Tariq has, you analyze how do you get better at the game. You sit and play the game back and ask, where did I make the mistakes? That's how you get better at life in general, and the same principles apply in the street game. This is exactly what Tariq did with the help of Kane in season 2 episode 6. So when it comes to playing the game next time, you can avoid making the same mistakes, which is where I think Tariq finds himself. He's evaluating the chessboard when it comes to Kane especially, but he'll also have to start evaluating those close to him.
You told me you wasn't trying to get attached.
Yeah, I think it might be too late.
Sometimes a street game gets complicated by the fact there's love involved, and therefore, sometimes you also need to know when to walk away. And I definitely put Tariq and Effie in that category. Both characters are very much alike, and that's when they make a dangerous combination, for the good and for the bad. The good because every king needs a queen. It's a vital piece on the chessboard. They're able to move in different directions and protect the king, just like Effie would argue she was doing by protecting Tariq by getting rid of Lauren. But again, she went behind Tariq's back. And was this for her own benefit? I definitely think so. So I think Tariq will find himself in a difficult situation, and maybe one where he may have to sacrifice his queen. When it comes to Brayden, he's about to enter the game on a different level in season 3, a season where I expect him to get his first kill. But who will it be? Let's not forget how Trace Weston knows a hell of a lot of information, and someone who isn't afraid to talk. He's not afraid to talk because he's not aware of the consequences of snitching, but Brayden is. So could Brayden have a huge decision to make in season 3 when it comes to saving Tariq, Trace, or himself? One advantage Brayden does have though is his background and his Western name. We've seen him use this power and privileged circumstance before, and it's gonna come in use again, most likely with how they run their drugs through Wall Street. Kane Tejada. Now he's a character who sometimes acts before he thinks, but actions have consequences, and eventually Kane will make a move that is impossible to get out of. It's human nature for people to make mistakes, but it's also human nature for some to not learn from their mistakes. For example, if you use your phone while driving over and over again and have near misses, you'll never learn until that moment you crash. And I do feel Kane is the same. He's someone who needs to crash, and by continuing to test Tariq's patience, eventually it's going to come to a point where Tariq makes his move and says checkmate. So let's come back to Kane being on Jenny's radar, because this all kicked off after he was caught on Lauren's wire, and so going into season 3, Kane will be firmly in the eyes of law enforcement, and can we rule out Tariq pulling a similar move the same way Tasha and Ghost did with Kanan. Sometimes you have to get rid of your enemies, and although I still maintain we shouldn't be underestimating Kane, I still think he is a ticking time bomb. So could we see Tariq, Effie or Brayden working together to get rid of Kane, the same way Tasha and Ghost once did with Kanan? Drew is someone who's been stuck in 2 worlds ever since the beginning of Ghost. It stems from his love from art and him wanting to live a normal life, but being born into a family who are deep in the criminal world. That of course conflicts with how he wants to live an open and honest life with Ev, who's like Trace, a civilian, but a civilian who knows way too much, which is why he was tasked to take his life by Lorenzo, but he didn't have it in him to kill someone he loves. But as we enter season 3, I believe this is Drew looking at his reflection in the gun, and that's because he has a choice to make. For as long as Ev is breathing, he's a risk, and as Lorenzo once taught him, no loose ends.
Rule number 1, no loose ends.
But does Drew have it in him to kill someone he loves, but someone who may prove useful to law enforcement in piecing the puzzle together? Regardless of whether he has it in him or not, Ev has to go. But this particular plot doesn't end there. Ev's card was used to access the roof up at Stansfield, and with Drew spending a lot of time there, will Whitman connect the dots from the clothes he saw on the floor to Drew's name being written in Jabari's notepad, and how Ev mentioned his name in season 1? There definitely is a lot to unpack when it comes to this story with Drew, but one which in my opinion will definitely have a deadly consequence, because sometimes in chess, you have to sacrifice a piece to save another, and in my opinion, Ev will have to be that sacrifice. Now, as we talk about sacrifices, Monet's someone who's already lost Zeke, and she's made it clear from the beginning of season 2, she wants out the game, but not at the cost of her kids. But Diana is someone who's proven to be a problem, Kane is a ticking time bomb, and Drew has his heart set on something else, and let's not forget Lorenzo's the one who killed Zeke. So it's a never-ending cycle with the Tejadas. But a theory that did spring to mind while putting together the investigation board was if Tasha sacrificed herself to save her son Tariq, would Monet do the same? Could season 3 end up with Monet being thrown in jail? Now in New York, Tommy's not only supposed to be dead, but his and Tariq's relationship wasn't left on the best of terms. But sometimes a common enemy brings the street game together, and that is what I think the investigation will lead to, Tommy and Tariq having to work together. Blanca Rodriguez wants to investigate the mayhem in Chicago, and the man at the center of attention is supposedly dead, Tommy Egan. So what do you guys think will happen when and if Blanca finds these pictures? This is why I think it really is all set for yet another crossover between Ghost and Force. Maybe not with Tommy coming back to New York, because we've already seen that happen once before. Never say never, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tariq gave Tommy a call to warn him Blanca's coming. Or my wildcard prediction and theory is Tariq heading to Chicago. But I do think this crossover is coming, and it all centers around Blanca Rodriguez and her investigation. So with that being said, drop all your thoughts down below on everything from those involved from law enforcement to Davis protecting Tariq and the Tejadas, the suspects, the sacrifices, death predictions, and the crossover with Force. And as always, I always finish on a question, and the question I have for you guys is, if Tariq has to sacrifice someone to save himself, who will he sacrifice? Could we see him do something similar that Ghost and Tasha once did with Kanan? Could Tariq get rid of Kane? Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section, and of course if you are new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 2 Ghost and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.